M Night Shymalan. He would knock this out of the ballpark. Tobit is a story. It's in the Bible, but there's actually a lot of magic and supernaturalism, which is something that Mr. Shyamalan has built his career on. It's a little spooky. I'm not sure your listeners have know the story, even though there's 1.5 billion people who know the story from their religious training. Catholics, Orthodox Christians, Jews, many, all have received this training, even when they're little kids. Yeah, and not everybody knows the story. There is a girl, a young lady in the Old Testament, about 3,000 years ago. She is married 7 times. And each time a demon comes and kills her new husband before the marriage is even consummated. They never get to the wedding bed. Sometimes the groom is killed in the tent where he just got married seconds before. Sometimes it's in the wedding hall at the reception. Sometimes it's in the parking lot, leaving. Sometimes it's carrying the bride over the threshold. But this demon who's doing it is named Asmodeus. And he is particularly villainous. I mean, all demons are, but when you're killed by a demon, it's not pretty. And this poor young lady, her name's Sarah, is victimized 7 times over. And even little kids in the Catholic Church, they go to Sunday school and they're taught about a woman who loses 7 husbands, and she still doesn't lose her faith. And so basically that's Sarah. She has her doubts, not doubting God, but she doubts that she can take much more. She prays to God to take her life, to kill her. God's not going to do that. Instead, God sends an angel, Raphael. And Raphael is going to take care of the demon. Raphael's also going to take on the problem of Tobit. Now, Tobit will be, in the future, Sarah's father-in-law. Tobit's 80, and he's Jewish, and he's in Amsterdam, which is... I said it in Amsterdam. I can't make a movie with people in robes 3,000 years ago. You can call it Tobit if you want, and a lot of people would see it. More people would see it if it's set in, and it'd be more an enjoyable experience if it's set in Amsterdam in the 1930s. So I move it from 3,000 years ago to 80 years ago, right on the eve of the Holocaust. Amsterdam is a unique situation in the Holocaust. The Jews fought. They didn't get on the trucks gingerly. They resisted and they fought back. And that's why I think a lot of people at the time knew what had happened in Poland 2 years before. They knew what was happening all over Eastern Europe, Czechoslovakia. Jews were being deported and put in camps. In Amsterdam, the Dutch seemed to know what was going on, so they resisted. So what was the Nazi reaction to this resistance? Even more brutality. So that's the reason I set it in Amsterdam. And the story requires Toby, who's going to be the groom, and Raphael, who's the angel protecting him, to travel over water to London. That's where they meet Sarah. Toby, who's going to be the groom, is a little apprehensive. You can imagine dating, falling in love with, becoming engaged to a girl who's lost 7 husbands to demonic murder. Well, you don't want to be the 8th, so Toby wants to leave, spend the night in the house. The father invites him to stay the night, visit the bank the next morning, collect his money, and then the plan is to go. But he falls in love with the girl. The girl likes him. Toby is apprehensive, but Raphael, the angel, nobody knows he's really an angel. I guess the audience can pick up on that. There's clues here and there. But Toby doesn't know who his companion is. Tobit has prayed for a companion to go to London to pick up some money. Tobit's gone blind, and he's accustomed to taking care of his family. And with that revenue stream ended by his disability, the blindness, he needs that money, and he remembers money that he deposited when he was young. So he sends his son. Now, how would you like to travel from Amsterdam to London in the 1930s? They didn't wire money, not like we do today. So he was expected to go to London and physically pick it up, and it's a large sum of money, like an investment, like a retirement nest egg, enough to get them through their old age. And so you don't want to do that by yourself. That's why Tobit prayed to God to send a companion. And when you look at what's written about Raphael, there's like 3 things. One, he is especially good at repairing relationships. So all of this has put a huge strain on the families. 7 Jewish weddings and 7 demonic murders. So all the families are blaming and kind of at odds with one another. But Raphael smooths it over. Also, Raphael is the guide. If you're lost, physically or spiritually, Raphael is the angel that can take care of that. Toby needs a guide, a companion, because nobody wants to travel and bring back that much money because of the fear of being stolen, robbery. And then Raphael is the angel most closely associated with nature. And some things happen on the boat on the way over that make you think maybe Raphael understands a little something about Mother Nature. So that's why the part of Raphael is so important. Let's talk about the magic. Tobit's blindness will be healed. The demon will be killed, wrapped up in a rope like a ball of yarn, and Raphael is going to roll him down the hill into the Thames River, and he'll sink into the water. End of story. Actually, that's not the end of the story. The Nazis are on their way, and we have to decide. From the very first, I think people will be curious whether Tobit will die peacefully in his bed in Amsterdam, or whether he'll have grandkids, or whether he'll be carted away into the death camps, which would be a frightful, horrendous death. We want 80-year-old Jewish men sympathetic to die a peaceful death. He's pious, prays constantly, he's charitable, he takes care of strangers, he takes care of fellow Jews, he takes care of his family. This whole movie, the whole story, is about him taking care of his family. The reason that he needs the money and the wife for the son is for his family. So yes, M Night Shymalan would be awesome. I guess the magic. I have an idea now that you've brought this up. What about two directors? That's crazy, unheard of. But the film is 7 Weddings, which are upbeat and not exactly Mr. Shyamalan's style. But why couldn't you get a different director for the weddings? And then I know he can handle the demons, the 7 demonic deaths, and the fight between the angel and the demon. Mr. Shyamalan can do that. Now, whether he would share, there have been films with 2 directors, sometimes on purpose, sometimes by necessity. That's an interesting proposition. It's not in Protestant Bibles, but Protestants and Catholics are not at odds with one another today like they were. The difference between Catholics and Protestants in the 1920s were the Catholics were on the right side of the theological spectrum, and the Protestants were on the left. But with the advent and threats from Islam and threats from atheism and disinterest in the churches, all denominations, it's brought Lutherans and Christians, they're next door neighbors now. They don't talk about differences. They talk about their similarities and the differences with unchristian religions. Not so much the Buddhists or the Hindus, but mostly Islam. So there's an external threat. They see it as an external threat. I guess what I'm trying to get at is there will not be a lot of Protestant protest against the film of Tobit. It's chiefly Catholic. It's in the Catholic Bible. It's about 8 pages. I would suggest that you read it. That's the shortest film treatment. I have a letter that summarizes this. 7 Jewish weddings and 7 demonic murders. But if you want a treatment of the entire story, a little bit more in detail, you can read the Bible. There's plenty of Bibles out there, probably well over 1 billion with the story. It's 8 pages. My screenplay is 98 pages. So we're talking an hour and a half, hour and 45 minutes probably. Feature length. There's never been a feature length film. There was a silent in the 1920s, and I asked a Catholic priest in Ireland, in Dublin, Irish Catholic priest, and he said, well, that's because of the anti-Catholic bias in America. And he spoke to me on political terms. It was because no film of Tobit was permitted because of this bias, and it was chiefly political because of World War I. He said, isn't it curious that 4 years after World War I ended and the American boys returned, the American Lutherans began to the push to remove Tobit, and some other books from the Bible. So the Protestant Bible and the Catholic Bible are not identical. Tobit is in the Catholic and Orthodox Bibles. And a lot of Jews, the attentive public, Jews that paid attention in school, they know this story. No one knows history, their history, better than Israelis and Jews. Americans are stupid about their history. Russians are pretty good, very good about knowing their own history. Americans are stupid. Sorry. Well, the chief reason it's compelling because of the weddings and the murders. The second reason you should make this film, Mr. Shyamalan could make this film, would be the 1.5 billion tickets he's going to sell first weekend. It's a global thing, and it's heartfelt. You can't put little kids, Catholic kids, in Sunday school and 8 or 9 years old, and they learn about a woman whose husbands were killed. 7 husbands were killed by a demon, and them not remember it. They all remember it. They all know this story. And Mr. Shyamalan probably sees the wisdom in making films brought about by public expectation. In other words, I think films should be made when there's an expectation that they're made. Public pressure. Just think about that. There's 1.5 billion people that know the story from print, letters and words, but they've never seen it on celluloid or digitally streamed these days. I think there's a thirst. They want to see it. And it's a great tragedy and travesty of art in the Hollywood system if it's never made. It's you can make the argument it is religious bigotry that a story this old, this established, this popular in religious training, and it's never been made into a feature film. There's animations and there's short films that are meant to be ancillary material that goes along with their Bible studies, but the production quality is very bad, and the magic isn't as clear. Mr. Shyamalan would read this script and he'd go, "Oh, there's a lot of great scenes. It's spooky. A demon, 7 murders." And you alternate that with weddings, cheerful, sad, cheerful, gross, cheerful, horrid, cheerful, bloody. A great, funny, happy wedding, immediately followed by blood splatter. And you see a pattern, but you know the pattern's got to end some way. So in the end, it's a uplifting story. Listen, all of this in M Night Shyamalan and demons and the gore, it's still a family movie. Sarah's family, Tobit's family, they're in a pickle, a real situation. The Nazis are coming. They've got to get through a demon and a wedding, and then everything can be okay. But Tobit's not going to die until he solves the problem, and that's why he's likable. Larry McMurtry, I talked to him 30 years ago, more. I was a kid. I was like 19, and we were talking about Lonesome Dove and what accounted for its popularity and success. He said likability. People like Gus and people like Captain Call. And he said just like they like Don Quixote, and Sancho Panza. Sure enough, you ask educated people who are the most likable characters in history, that's who they will, that's in the top 10. So now what about this? What does that have to do with this story? It's likability. If you don't hire a Sarah with a lot of gravitas, Sandra Bullock, she's been married 7 times. She could have been She could have been married 7 times. And guess what? She's still going to be Miss Congeniality. Just like Sarah's not going to let a demon. Now, she goes up and down on the scale of emotions, but she doesn't lose her faith in God. Neither would Sandra Bullock or Reese Witherspoon. Or you can't give the part of Sarah to some girl off the bus or first weekend in Hollywood. It's just not going to work. The character has gravitas. And same with Tobit, too. You can't give it to just anybody. They have to have a lot of weight. Tobit has a lot of weight. He's only in the Bible 8 pages, but he's one of the most likable characters. They've done surveys. Which of these Bible characters would you want to have dinner with? Would want to influence your kids? Who would you want to hang out with? And on a per page basis, Tobit, ranks higher than Moses and Noah and Abraham. Now that's on a per page basis. So Tobit is a small part of the Bible, where Noah, Moses, and Abraham, they get far more coverage. Yeah, Mr. Shyamalan would do it if he would do it, if he even sees the script. What these people do is they build trenches around themselves, and I understand that. I saw an academic source researched and documented there are 400,000 scripts written a year. And I know you're going, well, I don't see that many, obviously. But we're 310 million people. If less than 0.5% write a screenplay, and doesn't everyone have a screenplay? And when they get tired of pitching the one from last year, they write a new one. That doesn't sound unreasonable. Well, the people around Mr. Shyamalan, they can't read a 1% of that. It's just not going to happen. So that's what managers and talent agents do. They dig a moat, and it's a miracle if that drawbridge ever comes down and you can cross the moat. But if you know someone in Mr. Shyamalan's camp and is on his team, it won't take 10 seconds. 7 Jewish weddings and 7 demonic murders. And see if that doesn't get his attention. Sure, I'll ask away. I'm here. Ask questions. Did I go too long? I don't know. You can edit it out. You know better than I.